Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 13 wide receiver rankings. Couple of notes right off the top here. A few players that I will be not be ranking as of this point in time, among other less notable names. But Rashid Shaheed, Demario Douglas, T. Higgins, Noah Brown, Chris Olave, all not ranked. All guys who, if ranked, might alter others' rankings, etc. So we'll keep an eye on those guys and rank them if we need and make other changes as needed as well. Also, don't forget, tonight, 2 hours prior to the Thursday Night Football game, I will go live for any of your start-sit questions, as well as on Sunday, 3 hours prior to the main slate of games. I will be here on YouTube live as well for start-sit questions, etc. And you can find my rankings available up on the website, www.dffforge.com, for each and every position. Did videos on the other positions as well. And let's quick recap how I did last week with my wide receiver DFS recommendations. You can find my recommendations for week 13 at the end of this video, and also how I did with my love 'em and my fade 'ems. Love 'ems, plural. So, for the Thursday slate, I did last week's a little bit differently than normal. I gave you two names. I gave you DK Metcalf at 6,500 and Brandon Cooks at 4,500. So, DK Metcalf finished as the wide receiver 70 in full PPR. That did not go so well. Brandon Cooks finished as the wide receiver 45. He finished as wide receiver 22. He cost 4,500 DK dollars. So that was probably a pretty decent deal there. Might not have won you a matchup, but at that price, he definitely held his own. And on the Sunday slate, I gave you Stephon Diggs at 8,800. Wide receiver 15 for that price. Probably not a good value. And then Josh Downs at 4,800 did not come through either. He finished as wide receiver 44. For my Love'ems, I gave you Justin Jefferson if he played. He did not end up playing. And Josh Downs was also a Love'em of mine, so that did not go well. And then Zay Flowers was a Love'em of mine, and he finished third on the week. Unfortunately, I didn't have him ranked incredibly high, at least not high enough, considering some of the names that I didn't suggest him over on Sunday morning for my start sit there. So I know I got him recommended for a few squads, but I think other squads didn't recommend him for, given the names I was offered up. So, sorry that didn't work out. But he was on my love 'em list. And then for my fades, I gave you Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, and Courtland Sutton. Two of those worked out. Devontae Adams finished as wide receiver 35. Courtland Sutton finished as wide receiver 34. And Jalen Waddle finished as the wide receiver 16. So he defied my fading. And that will bring us on to the Week 13 wide receiver rankings. I'll see you on the other side. And for some reason, I didn't do what I normally do and cover all but the wide receiver one. So you have seen my first tier already. These are my the elite, absolute must-start wide receivers. I don't think I need to do any convincing or explanation onto why, if they're healthy, they should be in your lineup this weekend. Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb in that order for my top five. Keenan Allen did come up with a quad injury, I believe, on the injury report on Wednesday, so we'll keep an eye on that. That could definitely knock him down in the rankings, if nothing else. Hopefully, it's nothing. Then for my second tier of wide receivers, that kicks off with Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman Jr., Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel in here, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins to wrap this up at my wide receiver 12. And we're still in must-start territory, essentially. As far as Ayuk through Pittman, I think that all three of them have some very great matchups, so, they're already good options. Must start. Mike Evans is a must-start due to what he has done on the season. It is a poor matchup, but he should still come through, I think, with an acceptable game at least. Deebo Samuel is a 11 for me this week. Have him ranked 10th here, going up against Philadelphia. So just in general, they probably won't all pay off here, but like the San Francisco receivers, receiving options, all of them, and that really doesn't eliminate Christian McCaffrey from the equation, which is why I doubt all four of the primary options here are going to end up paying off, but I still love Deebo Samuel, and given how highly I have him ranked, he earned a love him for me this week. Tank Dell did come up on the injury report on Wednesday as well, so keep an eye on that. I see I've not gotten rid of my misspeaking today that's been going on since recording my running back video that came out last night. Let's move on to this third tier. From wide receiver 13 through wide receiver 18, we have Devonta Smith kicking this tier off, and it's a good matchup for him going up against San Francisco, and he should be in a higher scoring game, I believe, here between Philadelphia and San Francisco, so I am optimistic for Devonta Smith this week. As far as Jamar Chase goes, going up against Jacksonville, came through last week all right for you, I believe, at least, right? Hopefully my memory's not wrong on that. So hoping for it to continue this week. Adam Thielen is in a very good matchup, and the wide receiver position is really already murky as of... I mean, Devonta Smith should probably be in the tier ahead of this because of what he's done on the season. You can even see the difference in the projections there. Just didn't quite make that cut for me, but I feel pretty comfortable with Devonta Smith. Once we get to Jamar Chase, I'm already like, gosh, like I want to move him lower, but then it's lower than who? And yeah, and it doesn't get to where I want to move guys higher until a decent amount lower on the rankings. But yeah, that is what it is. Right behind him, though, I do have another love him here in Terry McLaurin. You can also see the difference in the projections between those two, and that's why I do still have Adam Thielen ranked higher. Really good matchup. We've seen what he can do several times this season, and so, I thought last week would be my, I'd be cutting him off after if he didn't perform last week, but he's going to get another chance from me at the very least here. But as far as Terry McLaurin goes, Washington is going to have to pass in order to keep up with Miami. I expect them to be playing from behind this entire game, and, they already pass a lot anyways, so that's kind of the... Does it really change a whole lot for Terry McLaurin? I don't know for sure, but I'm optimistic about it. He's going to get 11 from me. There's not a whole lot to love this week outside of those really top two tiers there until you get to like Devonta Smith. Then Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, the Jacksonville wide receivers back-to-back here, and it's a solid matchup. My main fear is that Cincinnati doesn't put up a fight, and Jacksonville's going to be able to rely on ETN to get the job done, to get the dub for them. So probably not going to see both of them pay off for you unless Cincinnati really puts a good game plan together and has a good day. Now let's move on to this fourth tier, which is I believe the biggest tier that I've ever had on this show. And there it is. It starts at wide receiver 19, goes all the way down to wide receiver 39, and I thought I'm going to end up talking about all of these guys, because I kind of realized I was going to have such a fat tier after writing up stuff for like half of them, and then I was like, well, I'll cut down how much I'm talking about them, and I'll just talk about them all, because it didn't feel fair to start cutting people out of this tier and not talk about them. I knew I would get comments about it then. Oh, you skipped so-and-so. Well, yeah, because I'm the same as ECR. Whatever, we're going to avoid that. Let's get going here. Puka Nacua at wide receiver 19, and I just don't trust him at all. Otherwise, he would be higher, but I couldn't bring myself to get anyone else over him. That's going to be a common theme here in this video, or it already is a common theme. And it is one of the toughest matchup for Puka going up against Cleveland in the league so far this season. They are going to be short Denzel Ward quite potentially, so that would be huge for one of these receivers going up against Cleveland. But still, he hasn't been too great since the return of Kupp, and I think that's... I'm kind of more so expecting that to continue. But he's also earned a certain amount of trust to this point in the season. So we shall see. As far as DK Metcalf goes, Seattle most likely will be playing from behind the entirety of this game against Dallas. So expect him to pass a lot. And DK, has been the best receiver on this team up to this point in the season. Wide receiver 21. We've got Garrett Wilson going up against Atlanta. He saw 10 targets last week, and that's enough for me to take a chance on him. And anybody, really, regardless of who they are, and Garrett Wilson isn't just anybody. Wide receiver 22, we've got Courtland Sutton, and I think that these teams are pretty fairly matched, so Sutton should get, get game flowed out of this against Houston. I don't think they're just going to be able to run out the clock or anything against Houston. There are some, Tank Dell's out and Noah Brown's out. Maybe we start to think that Denver could control this game, but at this point in time, I'm fairly optimistic about Courtland Sutton in a week where I'm not optimistic about too many guys. DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver 23. I'm basically only fading him because the ECR in him is a fair bit higher than where I have him ranked. The ECR in him was wide receiver 18, and I think that's because people look at Indianapolis and they say, oh, that's a great matchup for him. I'm guessing that's why, but Indianapolis is really not a good matchup. It's a minus matchup, worse than average type of matchup. So I don't have amazing expectations for DeAndre Hopkins this week. Then at wide receiver 24, we have Deontay Johnson. Arizona is a plus matchup, so above average, of course. And Pittsburgh's offense looks better now without Matt Canada, and I'd feel pretty darn comfortable rolling him out there. Once again, cautiously optimistic about him. Wish it was a little bit better of a matchup, but at the same time, Arizona doesn't really scare you a whole lot. George Pickens, same story here. Just the only thing about him is he's a little bit more boom or bust. You can even see that in the projections. A little lower floor, a little higher ceiling, barely. But that is, how it ends up working out for George Pickens. Although this new offensive scheme, I think he will be utilized. He'll be a little bit of a safer play going forward. Then we have Marquise Brown at wide receiver 26. It's a pretty good matchup going up against Pittsburgh. And, we're in a sea of bad matchups. So I'm willing to give Marquise Brown another shot yet again. Once again, I don't want to necessarily, but I'm willing to. You just have to hope that things come together this week. And then we have Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 27. One guy I did not write anything about, and I think that's because I am planning on moving him up. I already actually did move him up after initially last night when I originally made this, just jumping him down. I think I had him behind Brandon Cooks maybe. But I almost feel more comfortable with him than Puka Nacua, so we'll just see where that goes throughout the week. But, I asked this in my other video. I've got a flex play tonight. I have to choose between Puka, Cooper Kupp, and Zach Charbonnet. So if you think I should play Zach Charbonnet, please let me know, because I kind of think I should. I don't know. Then we have Jaden Reed at wide receiver 28 here, going to come up against Kansas City, which is not really a good matchup for wide receivers overall. However, I do think, he runs out of slot. He's probably not going to see L'Jarius Sneed, at least not too much. And so he should be able to do all right and produce something for you this week. Then we have Tyler Lockett at wide receiver 29, and it's just a terrible matchup for him going up against Dallas. The silver lining is they're probably going to have to pass for the entirety of the game, and maybe he could come up with be the guy this game instead of DK Metcalf. Then Amari Cooper at wide receiver 30. It was bad with DTR, right? But DTR is gone, and I'm fairly optimistic about him with, especially with PJ Walker, because he was decent with PJ Walker at the helm. So I think you can get back to starting him if you don't have better wide receiver options than the top 29 that I have here so far. Come back and check the Saturday update video to see if I move him up even more. Wide receiver 31, we've got Rashee Rice, and it's not a particularly great matchup. It's exciting to see him finally get targeted heavily last week. Super excited to be able to rank him up higher than this. But this week, going up against Green Bay, I am a little less excited about it for now. But hopefully those targets continue so we can have some confidence next week. Or, I'm just wrong on it. That would be good, too. Then Josh Downs, we have at wide receiver 32. And going back to the well again with Josh Downs, he was my 11, I believe, right, for me last week. This should be a good matchup for him going up against Tennessee. There aren't a lot of guys that I'm excited about the circumstances for this week, so he kind of just got this love him by default, since I felt that going with Jalen Waddle is really the guy I wanted to give a love him for this week, but who's not starting Jalen Waddle this week? So that felt like a cop-out. I will say, I also, close calls here, Deontay Johnson and Amari Cooper were both near loves for me, just for whatever reasons. I ended up going with Josh Downs here. Then we have Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 33, and it's a good matchup for him. It's that simple, so hope for him to have another good week. Chris Godwin in at wide receiver 34, and for a guy that already lacks upside, this isn't a matchup that excites me. He needs volume in order to have a big week, and the Carolina people don't attack Carolina that much through the air. It shouldn't be a high-volume passing attack for Tampa Bay necessarily this week. They should be trying to run the ball a lot. So ultimately, you're hoping for a touchdown for Chris Godwin this week, and I am pretty sure that Tampa Bay is going to be able to drive the ball against Carolina, so there will be those opportunities. Just, don't see the upside all in all, and it's tough to rely on touchdowns. Then Drake London have at wide receiver 35, and I was optimistic for him last week, but he did not end up taking full advantage of Marshawn Lattimore missing from that New Orleans defense. Not that he had a bad week, but he didn't have a really good week, and so it's tough to trust him in the single worst wide receiver matchup in the entire league going up against the New York Jets. Christian Watson have at wide receiver 36, and he draws the tough matchup from Kansas City. We're pretty sure that he'll see plenty of L'Jarius Sneed, and so they've shut down plenty of teams' wide receiver ones this season. I listed off the names last week. For the most part, it's been a really tough matchup. Then we got Curtis Samuel here at wide receiver 37, and he could draw a lot of targets in a game that they'll be playing keep up in. And I've liked a lot of Washington players this week. Antonio Gibson being on the field, however, I believe could limit the amount of targets that Curtis Samuel will see in this game, and I would imagine that they might want to take a few more deep shots in this game than they normally do. I think guys like Jahan Dotson, of course, Terry McLaurin has a higher ADOT. They just might need to be a little bit more aggressive and might fall behind fairly quickly. And usually the guy going deep is not Curtis Samuel. He is coming off one of his better weeks last week. I've had his back all season long. Love Curtis Samuel. I've had him ranked, higher in my preseason rankings everywhere. He's always been on my free agents list in my waiver wire videos as somebody who you can just pick up and play and hope for the best from. But this week, I'm going to be taking my shot, and I will be fading Curtis Samuel, my boy. Then we've got Joshua Palmer in at wide receiver 38, and his return, if it happens this week, could be huge for this team, for this offense, and I think that he could be utilized. And New England's a pretty good receiver matchup. Depending on what his status is looking like by Saturday, how the news looks around him, I really don't know that it's very likely that he plays. I probably shouldn't have ranked him, to be completely fair, but I did. I might have to move him up a little bit further if the news is all good. Then we got wide receiver 39, Romeo Doubs. Much like Jaden Reed, it's not a great matchup. Kansas City, for the most part, don't allow a whole lot of points to wide receivers, but they do allow points to wide receivers, of course. And I think that there's an opportunity for him with, once again, Christian Watson likely drawing the ire mostly of L'Jarius Sneed, and that could open some things up for Romeo to potentially have a week that is good enough for you. It's going to bring us to this final tier here. Wide receiver 40 through 43, Tyler Boyd, Jahan Dotson, Jerry Jeudy, A.T. Perry. So just looking back at that past tier, generally I say, like, the idea of a tier break is that I could see, or I wouldn't argue against playing the last guy in a tier over the top guy in a tier. Now, that's a really, really big tier, so that might be a little less true than normal. But the main idea here is it's probably going to be shuffling around. Also, my confidence factor, just in general this week for really any of those 20 wide receivers, is not very high. I'm not confident in how they will do this week and what we should expect from them. But on to this last tier here, which I really only included in this video because, first of all, I usually like to get like 42 plus wide receivers into these videos most weeks. Also, because A.T. Perry's in this group going up against Detroit, it's a really good matchup. If he's the primary receiving option, I mean, he's somebody you could definitely take a gamble on. I think it's a huge gamble, unfortunately. He has proven, nothing up to this point in his career as a rookie guy, not like an early round draft pick or anything either. But he does have an interesting skill set and fits the role, so we shall see. Now let's get on to my DFS buys for Week 13. And we're going to start where we just left off a short bit ago with A.T. Perry. He is my bottom of the barrel, big tournament, long shot kind of play here. He is going to cost you $3,300 and probably be the prime receiving option for New Orleans this weekend. And so, I mean, that's worth a shot. And you could pair him with my contrarian play, who's going to be quite expensive here. But I will be taking a shot on Jalen Waddle before we get to that contrarian play at $7,600 this week. He is at the upper end of expenses, but I do think that he'll probably have a good week and might be one of the better values on the week to get you a lot of points and help your lineup get over the top. And then for my contrarian play, I've got Cooper Kupp here at $7,800. Not expensive. This is not for the weak of heart for lineups building. If you're just trying to build, once again, like one of those big tournament lineups and you're going for it all, and it's, first or last place, doesn't matter. It's one or the other is what you're looking for. Then, Cooper Kupp at $7,800, it looks bad because he's going up against Cleveland, but they are going to be missing a couple of big pieces, and maybe they're going to be able to be had this week. And, of course, Cooper Kupp hasn't proven anything all season, and he's coming off of a bad game. So how many people are going to be trying that out? Probably not a whole lot of people. So I like Cooper Kupp to be a boom or bust option this week. All right, that is it for my rankings videos. Thank you very much for tuning on in. I hope you have a good fantasy weekend, and I hope you all make the playoffs. Peace out.